Gentlewoman yields back her time. The gentlewoman, Ms. Tlaib.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate both you and Ranking Member Mfume for working on this. I know we always talk about the money, but I want to talk about the human impact. It is devastating when our residents get that letter, and honestly, when they get those checks, they do really have no idea, but they're like, okay, I got a check from the federal government. They have no idea to say pause and let's figure this out, because what happens, not in a month, not in a few months, sometimes over 6-8 months later, and they get charged. Mr. Chair, Ranking Member, they get charged interest and back fees. And this reminded me when I was serving in the State House, the Michigan Unemployment Agency at that time, they had put in a computer system. We have a lot of auto workers in Michigan. And so in July, they would take, I think it was around the summertime, they would take a couple weeks off for what they call turnover. You know, they would do some maintenance in some of the auto companies in the assembly lines. And so folks would apply, and of course, just like every year, they would get their 2-week unemployment check. Years pass by or so forth, and all of a sudden they get these automated letter saying you committed fraud. We had people lose their homes, homes, over just not being able to pay their taxes and a number of other things. The question I have, and Ms. Williams-Brown, you can help me. We can't determine whether a payment went to the right person in the right amount. We call it improper payment, correct? That's what we call it, improper payment.
Correct.
So most improper payments, financial fraud, or are there other causes at play? And you guys talked a little bit about it, but I read that 91% of improper payments are attributed to an agency's failure. And we're seeing this right now, where I have folks that were getting unemployment during the pandemic, and they continue getting payment, even though they had, did the proper payment of saying, didn't send in their paperwork, they were getting the automated payments. And now they're getting back and they're saying you committed fraud, even though they could prove like, hey, I didn't fill out the paperwork, I didn't do anything. But it takes a long time because they have to go through the process of showing that they're innocent. Can you talk a little bit about that, Ms. Brown? Because it is devastating when they do get those letters.
So we've done work, I'll take an example from the Social Security Administration space and their disability program. They have a program called Ticket to Work that encourages people with disabilities to work. We found that it also creates a disincentive, because if you breach the threshold for the program, you then risk having your disability either reduced or cut. And there are a number of issues in terms of timing of reporting that can result in an improper payment, or the beneficiary actually provides all of their paperwork in time, but Social Security Administration doesn't process that paperwork in time to adjust a payment.
I've actually heard about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have we testified on this in June. I'm happy to submit that testimony for the record, but it creates an issue. So it's definitely a challenge. And if you look at some of the root causes, we really stress that agencies need to get behind the root causes of improper payments. And often, if you look at the root causes they provide, they really are providing reasons. They're providing categories of improper payments, but not the root cause. So the Social Security Administration identified, kind of failure to process the paperwork as one of the causes of improper payments. But the question then becomes, well, what was the cause for the slowness in processing the information? And that's where you start to pull the thread to get behind what the real root cause of the improper payment is in order to be able to address it.
One question to the chair, Hurwitz. One of the things I hear, and I don't know if it's you, but during the pandemic, what I heard is, even some people were coming back to work, but it wasn't full 40 hours. It wasn't the original. So they were trying to at least still be able to make up the difference between, them, they went back to work. And I actually have family, a resident right now that did everything right, but said, oh, but my hours were reduced, so I still would qualify at least because I'm not back at 40 hours. And there was this whole mix-up, and they were, I guess, given different kind of information, but then they said, no, you're committing fraud, you're back at work, but I'm not back at work at the full 40 hours, I'm only back at 20. I mean, can you talk about what we can do? Because our families are stuck in this. It's, you know, there are the scammers, and I love going after scammers. I can't stand them. I don't care if they're billionaires or not. All of them, the ones who scam our IRS system, all that. I can't stand it. But it's our families that just don't know, and they get that check, and of course they're not like, let me go send it back, or let me make sure this is right. They cash it, they put it in their bank account, they go pay their bills. Right. And I don't know how to fix it and how to make sure that we're not ruining their lives because we can't get it right on our end.
Yeah, I agree with you, Congresswoman, and I think it's something we've talked about here. When that happens, when the agency makes a mistake and sends the wrong amount of money out, they hold the person who got the check accountable, but they don't hold themselves accountable.
That's right.
For it. And what we have to figure out is a way to have that happen. I think the scorecard is a very important part of that, actually, that the bipartisan scorecard, because I agree that, you know, the public should know, you should know, the policymakers should know which agencies are doing it well and which agencies are falling down on the job. And when that happens with agencies, what you're mentioning, and Social Security Administration has had this problem, as talked about, what accountability measures are there internally?
I agree, yeah.
To figure that out? And frankly, as we've all talked about today and as we've had it discussed in this hearing, there aren't many. There aren't many agencies that are doing that. There are a few, but not many. And that's what we need to sit and work together on to address.
I apologize. I went over time. I didn't realize that, Mr. Chair. I apologize sincerely. But we do need to talk about timing. Our residents, after they made the mistake and they get the letter in a year, that's not fair. They've already spent the money. They're living check by check. They don't deserve to be punished. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I yield my.
Could I just add one thing about this issue? One of the things I want to make sure I mention, that agencies do have some flexibility in terms of waiving non-fraud payments that have been deemed to be improper because of eligibility concerns. And two things they can consider is fairness and impact. So agencies do have some flexibility to try to parse out someone who may have innocently received an overpayment and they tried to do the right thing versus fraudsters.